In today's video, I want to give you 5 ways to deal with anxiety when you are directly exposed to it. My name is Anna Byczko and I'm a cognitive behavioral psychotherapist. In this podcast, I pass the knowledge about the problems you may experience in your daily life. The most varied situations can arouse paralyzing anxiety in you. It can be meeting someone important, public speaking, or even entering a supermarket. You may be afraid of leading a lesson or another meeting, or approaching a terrarium with snakes at the zoo. Anxieties that people struggle with on a daily basis are plentiful. Today we are not talking about panic attacks, which are also kind of an anxiety disorder. We will talk about situations when you are exposed to the fear factor and you don't know how to deal with your emotional arousal. So, what to do when you are experiencing that kind of anxiety at a particular moment? The first step you can take when you are at the very epicenter of a situation that causes you anxiety is, first, focus on the physical symptoms. Concentrate on the physical symptoms of your anxiety during your exposure to what you fear. The physical symptoms may be, for example, sensation of muscle tension, heartbeat, nausea, etc. Accept them and embrace them. Try to experience them as normal physiological arousal. Second, be physically active at the time of exposure. Walk at the point of exposure instead of sitting, so that your emotional arousal can be channeled into a musculoskeletal system instead of driving stress-related physiological responses. Remember not to use physical activity to avoid anxiety or to perform a particular task you dread. Doing so will put you back into an avoidant coping style, which only sustains the reactions you want to modify. Third, the next step is to modify anxiety thinking. Identify the anxiety thoughts that come to your mind when you are exposed. Modifying them or coming up with alternatives will lower your anxiety levels. When your thoughts include, for example, that when you go to a party, everyone will be watching and judging you, the normalization of such a thought would be like this. For example, that it's usually normal for people to look at others, though, and judging may allow them to better understand the surrounding reality. Of course, come up with something of your own that suits you best and is functional in contrast to your previous thoughts. Fourth, look for evidence of security around. What characteristics of the situation indicate that it is safe and not threatening? Think about what other people do. How do they react in this situation? The point is, first of all, if you know a person who handles such a situation well, you can take an example from him. Another way is a focus on the breath. Don't breathe too deeply or too shallowly. Try to make your breathing steady. Focus on breathing with your abdominal tract or diaphragm. This has its physiological basis in the activity of the autonomic nervous system. And finally, fifth, visualize yourself successfully performing the task you are dreading during the exposure. By envisioning your success, you strengthen your self-confidence and at the same time your expectations of positive task completion. So if you are walking past a snake terrarium or if you have to go to the crowded movie theater, imagine that you are fearlessly, casually walking past the snakes. Maybe even stopping next to the terrarium, or that you are standing in the middle of a cinema hall and your breath is steady and calm. Watching an entire movie while sipping warm tea. In many research papers by psychologists and psychiatrists over several decades, It has been shown that the best cure for anxiety and fear is repeated and systematic exposure to situations we fear. Exposure is the presentation of external objects, situations, stimuli, or the thoughts, images, memories created inside us that we avoid because they cause anxiety. Exposure to situations we fear mobilizes our courage and makes us step out of our own zone of safety and comfort. Our tolerance to anxiety increases. The main thing is to persevere in this anxiety and not to engage in any of the behaviors you did before. It is important because when you try to escape from painful thoughts or bodily sensations, they become more and more important to you, more and more intense, or occur more and more often. Avoidance also means that you take your frightening thoughts literally, making them more believable, and you become more and more entangled in them. The crux of exposure is to wait in a state of anxiety and let it subside on its own, instead of engaging in behaviors to lower that anxiety at all costs. I say right away that this is not easy, because the body's most natural reaction to anxiety is to run away or seek safety. However, when you apply the above tips and wait out this condition, your anxiety will begin to decrease on its own. But how can this be applied in practice? When you usually sit in a restaurant near the exit to have access to fresh air in case you were to lose your mind in a public place, this time, as part of exposure, sit a little further away and wait for the oncoming wave of anxiety. When it arrives, look at it. Focus on your symptoms, thoughts, bodily sensations, breathing, as if you were reaching out to stroke some nice-to-touch material. Stay with those feelings. You don't have to try to make the anxiety go away at all costs. Rather, it's about just being in the situation, here and now, in this particular second of experience. Usually, the anxiety passes on its own after some time. Of course, you don't need to be successful right away. Such an approach has to be learned first, and this is best done when you expose yourself to different situations frequently. So it is a matter of practice, not supernatural skills. Okay, so that is the end of this podcast. Stay tuned with us and don't forget to check out our website virtualcouch.eu for more interesting information. Thank you very much for attention and see you next time.